Martha, that doesn't look like LA.
It's not,
Where are you?
although I'm in London. I'm doing a couple of days in the office this week. I also had to come back off my holiday because I heard you and James giving me grief about always being on holiday. But it's
That
actually hotter in London than it is in LA today.
Well, that may be true that we were giving you a little bit of grief. But then James very, very accurately pointed out, you do not take any more holiday than us. It's just that we rib you about it
He did.
on the podcast. So,
I've always liked that James Matthews.
yeah, exactly. Very good. I am Mark Stone,
I'm Martha Kelner.
and it's Friday, the 20th of June, day 151 of Trump's second term. And on Trump 100 today, as Western diplomacy efforts ramp up, we're given a 2-week deadline from Donald Trump to weigh his options on Iran. Are we closer to knowing whether he will join this war?
And alongside war and peace, doom scrollers rejoice because Trump has kicked a ban on Chinese-owned TikTok into the long grass once again.
So, Martha, another day of grappling with whether or not Donald Trump is about to launch a military strike on Iran, whether he wants to try and completely wipe out Iran's nuclear facilities. He was in the Situation Room today receiving another intelligence briefing from his key aides. We in the world have all been waiting for some clarity. It has been quite a few days now with very little clarity about quite what he's thinking. The sense we've got is that although this ambiguity is useful to him, it's also because he's been being pulled in lots of different directions. I was inside the briefing room today as Karoline Leavitt came to the podium. Everyone was holding their breath, waiting for news. And it was a significant update on his thinking and his timeline. There was, I think, a genuine moment of suspense as she began by saying that she had an update from the president.
I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
So maybe yes, maybe no, but definitely a decision within the next 2 weeks, apparently. I've been watching this unfold over the past few days.
Yeah.
There's a bizarre nonchalance to all of this and a bizarre level of openness from the president and from the press secretary today. A really strange press conference. I thought, I am decisively not going to make a decision, is what they're saying. And it's fascinating watching all this play out from the podium. And Leavitt sort of began this press conference talking or trying to talk about immigration and the economy, but obviously very quickly she was talking about Iran for the rest of the time because that is all anyone's interested in at the moment. This is an America First White House, desperate to focus on those domestic issues like immigration and the economy. But every day it's this will they, won't they, about entering a foreign conflict.
Yeah, and on that point about the desire to focus on domestic successes as they would see them, it really is an issue that is frustrating the MAGA coalition. This 2 weeks, I think, is a window for negotiations perhaps to come to something. I mean, remember, we know that the British Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, he has been in Washington. He's been talking to his counterpart, Marco Rubio. He's now on his way to Geneva, where he'll meet with other European leaders and the Iranians as well. We know, too, that Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's Middle East envoy, has been talking by phone, we think, to the Iranian foreign minister. That's got to be positive. So perhaps on the face of it, take Donald Trump at face value. He really genuinely wants to give diplomacy a chance. 2 weeks is what he is saying he will need. But then there was that curious bit in the news conference where she said that he's decided 2 weeks before he decides whether to go or not. And for me, it's like, well, what does go mean? Does it mean bomb Iran? Does it mean regime change? I guess the answer is he doesn't know. So it feels like he's bought himself some time just to work out what to do.
If we are to take Leavitt at face value, she was saying in today's briefing that regime change in Iran is not their goal, but there will be grave consequences, in her words, if they don't come to a deal. She says that Trump is expecting the Europeans to tell the Iranians that they can't have a nuclear weapon, that they're all in agreement on that. any deal, she said, would also have to include a ban on enriching uranium, which is the process that happens before you create a nuclear warhead. The Iranians, meanwhile, are saying they're not going to negotiate under duress, that the Israeli bombardment needs to stop in order for them to agree on anything.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. The Israelis want Donald Trump to act now. We heard Benjamin Netanyahu at the site of a bombed hospital in Beersheba in southern Israel, which was, a visceral reminder that Iran can break through Israel's air defenses and inflict major damage. And Netanyahu was talking up his relationship with Donald Trump and promising revenge against Iran.
President Trump will do what's best for America. I trust his judgment. He's a tremendous friend, a tremendous world leader, a tremendous friend of Israel and the Jewish people. And we will do what we have to do, and we are doing it. We are committed to destroying the nuclear threat, the threat of a nuclear annihilation against Israel. We're able to do it. And we, of course, will make our own determination. But I have to say that the partnership with the United States, the partnership with President Trump, with whom I speak to almost every day, is incredible.
So effectively, Trump has Netanyahu in one ear and Steve Bannon in another. And we've learned that Trump was actually having lunch today with Bannon, who is his former chief strategist, a real big loyalist. Steve Bannon being the architect of the flood the zone approach and also a staunch opponent of US military action in Iran. He's been saying in recent days that another war in the Middle East would tear the US apart, in his view. He said, we cannot have another Iraq. And he did this interview with right-wing commentator Tucker Carlson, who's another ally of Trump, in which he made his views crystal clear.
If we get sucked into this war, which inexorably looks like it's going to happen on the combat side, it's going to not just blow up the coalition, it's also going to thwart what we're doing with the most important thing, which is the deportation of the illegal alien invaders that are here. If we don't do that, we don't have a country.
And it's Bannon's view that the Israelis should finish what they started. And you can imagine him laying that out to Donald Trump today, not really the sort of light lunch that maybe Donald Trump was hoping for. I'm sure, Bannon will have been making his opinions very clear to the president.
Yeah. And it's not only Netanyahu in the other ear. I mean, it's those around him as well. I was listening to a compelling interview that Benny Gantz, who was the former sort of alternate prime minister in Israel, the defense minister as well, a senior IDF or retired IDF general, very influential. No fan, in fact, in the internal political rumblings in Israel. No fan of Netanyahu. But of course, on this issue, the whole country in Israel has come together. The reason I bring it up is because I thought Benny Gantz, who was talking to Yalda Hakim, go and look it up on our website. It was a really interesting interview. But he gave a compelling argument for why America should get involved in this war and why it was in the world's interests to help Israel to finish the job.
Iran has supported all these proxies around us. In Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Gaza. Look what happened on October 7th. This is all made in Iran. Let us not forget this. So Israel held itself as much as it could. And I think it's very important that we will intercept this nuclear approach of the Iranians and their strategic capabilities.
So such competing stuff in different ears, and Donald Trump's the man who can drive this in one direction or the other. But you know what, Martha? We're in crazy times when Steve Bannon is being the diplomatic one.
Yeah. I watched your video, Mark, that you did about this pulling the MAGA movement apart at the seams, and it is fascinating. This is really the first big issue that's tested that alliance, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's pulling them apart. I think there's a broader point to be made here too, because you're hearing all this stuff from close loyalists to Trump saying, "Don't do it. Don't engage yourself in this foreign war." Have you been listening to The War Game, one of Sky's other podcasts, Deborah Haynes' thing?
Yeah, it's fascinating and worrying and concerning and all of those things.
Right. It is. It's set in the near future. Russia attacks the UK. That's the main plot line. And a subplot within that is that the Americans are reluctant to get involved to help the UK. And right now, I think you can sort of see in real time how that could become a reality. There are people in Trump's ear telling him, don't help your closest ally, Israel, on this
Yeah.
real life conflict now. Now, clearly, a Russian attack on the UK is a slightly different scenario, but it's not a huge leap to imagine a scenario where the America First coalition is not the reliable ally and sees all of its interests purely at home. Definitely worth a listen, that podcast. Anyway, it's an aside. Back to the 2-week timeline that we've been given today. If Trump is leaning towards an attack on this nuclear facility inside this mountain south of Tehran, it sounds like something out of a Bond film, doesn't it? But if he is serious about this, then those 2 weeks, or the 2 weeks we've got now, give him the potential to mitigate against any risks that might be associated with any American military involvement. Remember, there are 40,000 troops in bases across the Middle East, so force protection for them will be necessary. Maybe moving non-essential personnel out, that's already happened. Maybe it needs to happen more. I guess it also gives him time to move strategic military assets into the region. We know there's a new battle group, carrier battle group, a aircraft carrier, and everything associated with that, moving from the Indo-Pacific into the Middle East.
How serious do we think that this 2-week timeline is? Because I heard it described as a placeholder rather than a timeline. By saying 2 weeks, Donald Trump often just means later on. I'll think about it later, because he's
he
given
says it
the
a lot,
2
doesn't he?
But he says it a lot.
When I heard, I've heard that. I heard Karoline Leavitt say it, and I was like, I've heard that before.
He's actually said it 10 times in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I get it, because sometimes it is quite nice to kick the can down the road, to give yourself chance to take stock, especially when the calculations are so delicate on something like this. Perhaps it gives Iran time to reconsider that nuclear deal that he and Witkoff have put on the table. But it's interesting from the White House as well today. Another view on just how close Iran was to a nuclear weapon. According to Karoline Leavitt, and I quote, she said, "Iran has all it needs to achieve a nuclear weapon. All they need is a decision from the supreme leader to do that, and it would take a couple of weeks to complete the production of that weapon."
Yeah, well, it's certainly new for her to say that, and some say it is nonsense. It's certainly not the view of the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. They're the ones that do the inspections. They say there is no evidence that Iran is building a nuclear weapon at the moment. 2 months ago, Tulsi Gabbard, she is Donald Trump's director of national intelligence. She testified on Capitol Hill that the nuclear program in Iran had not been restarted by the Iranians. And last Sunday, the Israeli prime minister told Bret Baier on Fox News, he said, quote, "Whether it would be 6 months or 12 months or 13 months is immaterial." So we've gone from like 2 weeks, according to Karoline Leavitt, to 6 months, 12 months, doesn't really matter. What's going on here? For me, Martha, there are real 2003 vibes going on. The Iraq War and the whole weapons of mass destruction 45 minutes claim. Look where that left things.
Yeah, and I guess key people in Western governments will be weighing up that question of imminence too. Netanyahu has cited his country's own undisclosed intelligence, claiming Iran was on the brink of obtaining a nuclear weapon. The Israeli government has also claimed, without publishing evidence though, that Iran was planning an imminent attack on Israel.
Yeah, this question of imminence is actually really important for Western governments as they weigh up the legality of their militaries getting involved and helping their ally, America. And in that context, our understanding is that the UK Attorney General, Richard Hermer, he has some concerns over the legality of Israel's actions in Iran. If he was to rule that what Israel did in Iran in attacking it last week, if he was to rule that that was illegal, and if that was the advice that he issued privately, this advice is never really published, but if that was the advice he issued or issues to Keir Starmer, well, then that would severely complicate Britain's ability to help the Americans in any operations that they would want to carry out. If Trump decides that he wants to go for that nuclear site and he wants to use his B-2 bombers and their bunker busters, they could be flown most conveniently from the British base at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. So that would require British support. The Americans could also ask for the UK's help in terms of refueling aircraft from the UK base in Cyprus. So you can see how it gets very complicated for Britain militarily and diplomatically for that special relationship if the UK is legally unable to support America.
One thing is for certain, though, and that's that Trump doesn't want to be another forever war president. He criticised Biden time and again for his involvement in foreign conflicts. He spent the entire campaign trail promising to end US involvement in global conflicts.
What he wants is a quick fix.
Yeah.
So if his generals had told him, do you know what, Mr. President, one bomb, one of those bunker busters, one sortie, one aircraft, drop a bomb and it's all over, he'd be like, yep, done, I'll do that. But it's not like that. They're telling him, do you know what? It's actually going to take several bombs, one after the other, and it might not work. We don't quite know. We also don't quite know how the Iranians will react. You know, will the Iranian proxies get involved in the region? Will our assets be attacked? Our soldiers? Will soldiers end up getting killed? You know, that's the advice he's getting. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, this is, for any president, this is a massively difficult decision. The Israelis have gone for something that they have been wanting to do for 20, 30 years. It's landed on Donald Trump's desk. He's in a bind.
We know now what he's going to be thinking about when he's on the golf course in Bedminster, his resort in New Jersey this weekend. That's where he is this weekend. We've got his schedule for the rest of the week. He'll be receiving briefings from the National Security Council every day. If we're to take that 2 weeks, literally, we know that nothing's going to happen in the next few days. But this is a constant problem for him right now.
Yeah, and then next week he's off to the NATO summit in The Hague, and I think he wants that to be seen as his show. The moment, the victory moment for him, as allies all cough up and meet his spending demands. So we'll have more on that, of course, next week. Now, Martha, TikTok.
Yeah, just a quick word on. Yeah, I don't know how often you're sucked in by the algorithm, Mark.
Do you know what? I don't use TikTok at all.
Really?
I've never got. No, I haven't. I haven't got into TikTok. Maybe I'm showing my age. I don't know. Instagram, but not TikTok.
I'm more of an Instagram. But anyway, good news for the people who do use TikTok. More than 170 million Americans do use the app. And now Donald Trump has extended the deadline for TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, to be sold to an American owner by another 90 days. So this is the third extension for the company.
It's not 2 weeks, it's 90 days.
Exactly. I think this might be...
I bet it was 2 weeks at one point.
Probably. And, it'll be another 90 days down the line because this is the third extension for the company to find a US buyer in order to avoid a ban. Again, it's a kick the can down the road situation.
The row over TikTok is all down to fears that the Chinese company ByteDance has unprecedented access to American users' data.
Not yours, though.
They, of course, ByteDance denies that is the case, but some Senate Republicans really want to see it banned and believe it's a genuinely serious national security threat. People like Ted Cruz from Texas, he says China is using the app for, quote, espionage and propaganda.
Trump's constant delay on enforcing this ban is starting to annoy some of those people, some of those senators. But while he was keen on banning TikTok in his first term, he has softened his stance now. I think because he knows it's the way to reach some of his younger supporters, and they did it so effectively on the campaign trail. So for now, that app stays as it is. So more Korean skincare videos for me. Anything to distract from the prospect of nuclear war.